Good morning, everybody.
Hello.
Let me just,
Hello.
hello. Um, yeah, hang on, let me just share the screen. Okay, can you see the slides?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, nothing else? None of the other stuff on this? Okay, so it's very good to be here with all of you. Good morning from Australia, even though it's your good evening over in the US. But good morning to those joining in from Australia and Asia. And let me just adjust the, okay, that's good. Okay, so it's really good to see so many familiar faces and some new ones as well. Fingers crossed we can all catch up at Bodhi Monastery next year. So how have you all been surviving the last year? Doing well?
Yes.
Yeah?
Pretty good.
Okay, so
We all
over,
safe.
that's good. That's good. It's good to hear that you're all safe. So, I mean, COVID is still with us. It hasn't gone very far. So just continue to be vigilant and protect yourself and protect others as well. So moving to this year's topic. So as usual, all three of us, myself, Venerable Tangzi and Venerable Shi, we've kind of collaborated our topics to give you a consistent theme to allow you to also have a very in-depth understanding. And I was just talking to Venerable Tangzi, and the topics we're presenting, mine is on cyclic existence, and Venerable Tangzi is presenting on nirvana. So basically, I'm talking about life and he's talking about death. So both of these are really difficult topics to wrap your heads around and to really understand it in terms of the way the Buddha taught us the meaning of cyclic existence and the meaning of nirvana. So to give you some relief from these, heavy topics of life and death, Venerable Siyi's role is to provide interesting stories from the sutras, but they are also about life and death and karma to help balance out things a bit more. So I hope you all enjoyed the talks this morning. I know I did. And I hope that over these 4 days, we can help give you an introduction to these more difficult topics. So last year, my topic was on karma, and we looked at all the different types of karma, the various characteristics of these different karmas, and the role of defilement and karmic forces and so on. Now, in one section, we briefly looked at karma and the 3 life cycle. So I hope you remembered that. But if not, we will be going through some of that material again in this particular talk. The reason being is that the topics of the life cycle, the topics of karma, and the topics of nirvana are all interconnected. And these are all very important in terms of our Buddhist practice as well. Okay, so as I was preparing this material and also reading Venerable Tangzi's material, it became very apparent that the teachings cannot be taken literally. Otherwise, it will really do your head in, and you'll start to think, what are we talking about? Have we lost the plot or something like that? So this is the disclaimer. I would like to stress the information that you will encounter these next 4 days should not be taken literally or interpreted rigidly. Rather, what we're trying to do is to share with you the teachings from the great practitioners of the past, and therefore we can learn from their guidance to slowly build up our ability to comprehend cyclic existence and nirvana for ourselves as the Buddha taught us. So what this is like is if someone gave you a secret recipe, it doesn't guarantee that you can create that dish, even if you follow the instructions to the T. But having that recipe, and with practice again and again and hard work, you can eventually master that particular recipe and produce an award-winning dish. So I know that over the COVID time, a lot of people are locked at home, so cooking has become a really big thing. And it's the same thing, you know, myself and several friends, we've all been trying to make sourdough bread. Same recipe, same sourdough starter, but some of us can actually get a decent loaf of bread and others get a brick. So please remember this warning. The material is quite advanced, particularly for my material, and Venerable Tantra's material is quite advanced. So you will find some areas a bit difficult. Jot down your questions and we can discuss those. We'll leave some time at the end of each talk to discuss them, or even better, to help you understand where you're having difficulties, is to write down the question. It's easy to ask a question, but most people then start babbling on because they haven't sorted it out themselves. If you sit down and write it, as Venerable Yin-Shun taught us, it actually means you know where your question lies. And then you can email the question to Faye and she can email it to us and we'll prepare a more in-depth answer for you. Okay, so now turning our attention to the topic of cyclic existence. Over these 4 talks, we will be looking at the following areas. So the first one is the theories. And in this part, we'll be looking at 2 fundamentally poisonous ideologies that have wreaked havoc on human beings and still continue to do so. And then we'll look at why we should be focusing on sentient beings as opposed to the focus on the external environment and so forth. The next area we look at will be the flow of life. And in this section, we'll be looking at how our existence is not just merely a mind or a body. And we'll be looking at how life flows from past, present, and into the future. And then we'll also look at who or what cycles from life to life. Now, this part overlaps with Venerable Tantra's material. So your homework will then be to marry up the two, the material from my talk and his talk, and that should help give you a better understanding on this. So following the flow of life, we'll look at the interconnection of life, which is looking at this web of life and how we are all really related and interconnected. And the very last is to look at life's transformation. So in this last part on life's transformation, not only will we cover the implications for our practice and daily life, after going through all the theories above, we need to be able to draw it back to our practice and daily life. And to do so, I will also draw your attention back to some of the material in the previous years that we have covered to help you reflect on and to be able to associate the different topic areas. Hopefully, it can serve as a bit of a review to jolt your memories about what we have covered over these past years. But more importantly, I want to help you to start being able to link up the different types of Dharma teachings that you read about and you hear from different sources so that you can actually establish a better understanding of how things fit together. So let us start. And the first thing we need to understand is that this world is imperfect. And as the Buddha says, it's full of suffering. Now, in English, there is the common saying, nothing is perfect. In Chinese, there is the saying which literally translates to, in life, 8 or 9 out of 10 matters are undesirable. So what this means is that undesirable matters are frequent in life. For many of us in the first world countries, prior to COVID, life may not seem so bad. And sure, we have our ups and downs, but deep inside, we don't really fathom just how much suffering there is, even in our own lives. Over the past year, nature seems to be trying to tell us. So not only do we all have to deal with COVID, we have also experienced many natural disasters, such as the floods in China and Nepal, the snowstorms in the US and Europe, the fires in Australia and in California, and the eruptions of volcanoes in Africa and Europe that have been dormant for decades. So apart from such obvious hardships caused by natural disasters, in these modern times, there are other types of suffering that seems to be increasing day by day, such as the tsunami of mental illness issues. So mental illness, such as anxiety, depression, and so forth, are not conditions that a person normally develops without reason. And to some extent, if we think about this more deeply, it kind of reflects the way we have changed in our lifestyles and the increasing stresses in the way we live. And ironically, all of these changes and stresses are brought on by ourselves. So for the majority of people, we all want to live in harmony and peace, but the ways we go about trying to get that actually perpetuates mutual hatred and conflicts. So much so that violence is getting worse and people are beginning to lose hope in their future. And you see this in the youths protesting for action on climate change. They express their worry about the world in which they will grow up and inherit. And you have people fighting against established political regimes because they see no future for their children and so forth. So all these bring on more stress, panic, and anxiety for ourselves. When we deeply appreciate the Buddha Dharma, you will agree that if we want to reduce and even eliminate the sufferings in this world, the only way is if everyone upholds and practices the Buddha Dharma. Using the Buddha Dharma is the best method to make our minds kind, flexible, tolerant, and to bring relief to this world. But why is this world so messed up? In Buddhism, we always stress that we have to have right view. Right view is critical. In contrast, having wrong views is disastrous. And since ancient times, there are 2 wrong views or ideologies that have caused and still cause humans to create the ugly situations we are in. In the present day, it is even more common and rampant. These 2 ideologies are materialism and fight for survival. If you look up the meaning of materialism in the Oxford Dictionary, it'll give you the following. So the first, materialism is a tendency to consider material possessions and physical comfort as more important than spiritual values. The other is in the field of philosophy, materialism is the theory or belief that nothing exists except matter and its movements and modifications. It's the theory or belief that consciousness and will are wholly due to material agency. So materialism is actually one of the significant errors in views that a lot of people hold, whether directly and they know it, or indirectly because of the way they've been conditioned as they grow up. Excuse me. So as society moves and advances and science progresses and develops, people's affinity towards religious beliefs seem to start diminishing, even to the point of rejecting religion, or some try to destroy it. Modern people's thinking and efforts are dedicated towards or focused on seeking the best material satisfaction. Now, although not everybody wants a Lamborghini, but we all still hope for some type of a comfortable life. Excuse me. So I'd like to stress there is nothing wrong with enjoying the finer things in life. But what we need to be careful of is that we must not let materialism become our compass. And a very clear example of this, where you can be misled by materialism, is if you look at the social media platforms that allow hateful speech and trolling to continue for some time before they stamp it out. And they will say it's hard to control these things. But if they can write an algorithm to send you only ads that they think you will like, I'm sure they can write an algorithm to stamp out hateful speech as well. But for them, leaving these types of messages, these types of hateful speech and trolling activities, it actually helps them generate more view time, more clicks, more likes, and so forth. And in their business model, all of this translates to income. So they're putting profit before people, in a sense. So that's what I mean by being careful about not letting materialism become your compass. Now, stemming from materialism, there is the dangerous idea, which is to think that human beings are just a thing. We're just a phenomena, and we come together, we don't know why, but then when we die, we disperse, and that's it, nothing more. So what this means is death is seen as the end of everything. And as a result, after death, we don't have any more responsibilities for what we did in life. And this can actually start to eat away at the spirit of morality. And so morality starts to deteriorate. According to the Buddha Dharma, people who hold this type of incorrect view think that there are no future lives. And so by inference, they don't really believe in past lives either. They think there is only this present existence. So such people think after death, the only thing left is the physical body, the material corpse. So there's actually no means by which they can take responsibility for the things they have done. And hence, death is also considered a solution when problems become unbearable. If life really did end at death and there was nothing else, it actually would not be that big of a problem. If it were that simple, then it's really no big deal if we just bumbled our way through life. However, the Buddha teaches us that a person's life does not begin from their birth and it does not end at the time of their death. The truth is that life already existed before we were born, and life will arise again after we die. So we are born from one place to the next, time and again. This continual life cycle is an issue that is hard to resolve, and the longing to resolve this issue makes it an important matter that as practitioners we need to pay attention. So the other ideology comes from a group of philosophers who think that this world is in constant struggle for survival. And only those who master the art of war will be able to survive and be winners. Now, the concepts promoted by this philosophy of survival of the fittest create situations where enemies are everywhere. There is constant stress, panic, cruelty, and the mindset of killing and harming. It even provides some validation for instigating harm. So the theory of evolution, where the weak becomes prey, is actually symbolic of this ideology. Such views clearly place oneself first and actually feeds our attachment to the self. Now, when we watch a David Attenborough wildlife documentary, we can see how animals kill each other to feed their own packs. And sometimes they even turn to cannibalism to eat their own kind. Now, in humans, this ideology can manifest not just in sustaining our daily lives, as in the basic necessities of food and water. It manifests in our societal structures, our institutions, and how we interact with each other. It always is the case that we must be dominant and others must be lower than us, or we have to be better, smarter, stronger, so we don't get bullied. We can see this ideology permeate everywhere. We see it in competition with businesses, between businesses, alliances between countries, favoritism towards one's own culture, race, and so forth. So sometimes your activities and behavior implicitly have this notion of survival of the fittest, but we may not actually realize it. So we really should reflect a lot more on the reasons for why we do certain things. If we ponder deeply about the combination of these two views of materialism plus survival of the fittest, the outcome in terms of human behavior is quite a dark one. What happens is over time, as spirituality is replaced by these two erroneous ideologies, the views of human beings begin to transform accordingly. On the one hand, materialism leads people to think that death is the end of everything, and there is absolutely no need to take responsibility for all that we do in our lives. Death is seen as a permanent escape. On the other hand, people want to live as long as they can and in the best way that they can. To achieve this, the only way is to dominate and conquer others. So this materialistic and confrontational thinking has brought about countless harm to people over time and continue to do so. In order for us to thoroughly correct these views, there are two aspects to tackle. So one is that human existence is not purely materialistic, and death is not the end of everything. We are not simply a combination of a material body. We have consciousness and we have morality and ethics as well. We have to personally take responsibility for all that we do in our lives. The other is that the ideal situation of human existence is not to conquer. Between human and sentient beings in general, we should have mutual assistance and an attitude of mutual respect and kindness. If we can nurture a societal spirit of mutual harmony and the sense of personal responsibility, then we can reduce the suffering in this world. Peace is never gained by war, and history attests to this. But yet, we still have not learnt any lessons. The Buddha had taught us the victor gains more enemies, the defeated suffer poor rest. Giving up victory and defeat, one can sleep peacefully. So to overcome these harmful ways of thinking, we must rely on the Buddha Dharma to counteract these poisonous ideologies and to create change from the ground up. So keep these in mind. Now we will turn our focus to the continuation of life as taught in the Buddha Dharma. So the view that human existence and the universe is an endless cycle, or that things are continuous, developmental, progressive, and so forth. This view is not merely taught in the Buddha Dharma. Other religions and philosophies also have similar concepts. And concerning the idea of existence is endless, people often hold the following perceptions. Now, these perceptions are more common worldly perceptions. So one is that from the view of the universe, everything, not just humans and animals, but also the flora, the forests, the mountains and waterways, everything is also alive. All these things reflect the universal flow of life. Everything in the universe demonstrates the vitality of life, and therefore this universe is constantly developing and progressing. So some people even talk about certain mountains as old or young. For example, Australia is considered a very old continent, while the Himalayas are very young and still growing. The other perception is from the view of human existence, and in this sense, it's from the view of a society. So from the growth of a race to the mutual assistance between groups of human beings, this indicates that society exists and continually exists. So these two perceptions about the universe and society are not necessarily sufficient to correct the above-mentioned poisons of materialism and fight for survival. The reason is because when we talk about the universe and society, there is a tendency to focus on what is external and common. And this creates a sense of relativity to oneself. So often, when the focus is on the whole, we tend to neglect the individual. Now, if we categorize things in the world based on common groupings, one grouping is minerals, vegetation, and animals. And so under the animal category or the fauna category, humans belong there. Another grouping is physical, physiological, and psychological. So what that means is the things in the universe, some only contain a physical form, some have physical and physiological form, and some, like humans, have all three: physical, physiological, and psychological. Now, regarding these categorizations, the Dharma's teachings on the endless cycle of existence, this endless cycle of life, is based on the manifestation of psychological activities. So this means that life, a single life, is counted as coming into being when there is psychological activity. And so that's why when we talk about life, we're referring to sentient beings, those that actually exhibit psychological activities. Each single life cycle is a continuation of endless life cycles. Just like endless ripples in a river that flows continually. When we see a river, we think it is the same one. Now, once I heard a Dharma teacher say, the same person cannot enter the same river twice. So think about that. The same person cannot enter the same river twice. Do you understand the deeper meaning of this? So as a person, we are continually changing. Psychologically, we're changing all the time, and even physically. So medically, they say that over a 5-year period or so, we would have renewed every single cell in our body. So as a person, we are constantly changing. Similarly, the flowing river is never the same. The water flows continually, and this causes the banks, the riverbed, and so on to constantly change. Excuse me. So I hope that helps you think more about that statement. The same person cannot enter the same river twice. Now, in the Buddhist scriptures, when it talks about the subject of life, it uses the term sentient beings or that which lives. Now, sentient beings is something with a consciousness and emotions. So that's the psychological element. And when it refers to that which lives, this comes from the perspective of karmic causes and results. So in other words, there is a physical form that undergoes one cycle of existence. Karma and its results arise due to defilements, and we covered this in detail last year. So therefore, when the Dharma teachings talk about the cycle of life, it is not about a simple physiological existence of the body. Rather, it's referring to a psychological existence. And this aligns closely with the meaning of the animal category. And this is why the categories of flora, mountains, rivers, and so forth are not the central focus of life or the embodiment of life when we look at it from the Buddhist perspective. And this is because although these other categories may have physical or physiological characteristics, they do not have psychological element. So in short, the animal category of beings have consciousness, so they are sentient, while the other groups that include vegetation and so forth do not have consciousness, so they are non-sentient. In addition, the concept of sentient beings taught in the Buddha Dharma is not just simply a physical, physiological, or psychological thing. Instead, it's a combination of all three that then manifests as life. So hence, it's unlike what some philosophers teach, especially those who only focus on the mind. When we talk about humans, although we refer to life in terms of each person's own body, the truth is that life is the same for all sentient beings. So the Buddha Dharma investigates the endless cycle of life, taking into account all sentient beings, not just humans. So Buddhist practitioners really should develop a firm belief and confidence in the view of life that spans 3 life cycles. We must understand that the end of this life is not the final end. Everything that has consciousness, once they die, it does not mean there is nothing left. Similarly, before it is born, it does not mean nothing existed. The ending of the previous life, or death, is the start of the next life. That means death signals both an end and a new beginning. So this is just like a seesaw. When one side goes down, the other side goes up. We should remember life is like a flowing river that runs continually. Now, in the major religions, there is generally a recognition that life continues on in some way. So, for example, the religions of Christianity and Islam believe that after death, one can be reborn in heaven or hell. And that means there is life after death. However, they tend to only focus on the present life and the next life. So theirs is considered to be a 2 life cycle theory. In contrast, Buddhism and some other Indian religions maintain the theory of 3 life cycles, and this takes into account past lives as well. Now here, it should be noted that the 3 life cycle is not to be interpreted literally as only 3 lives. Rather, what it means is there is a flow from the past to the present and into future lives continuously. With the theory of 2 life cycles, they tend not to touch on the issue of previous lives. So therefore, it is not really known to us anyway, why are we even born into this world? Why do we have to endure all of this hardship? And then you'd also start to question, why is it that some people are born healthy and complete, while others are born disabled and deformed? You know, why are some people smart and others not so smart? Why is it some people live a long life and others can die very young or even die in the womb and so forth? So there are a lot of differences that are kind of unexplained. And I once asked a Christian friend, and he told me, it's all God's plan. We should not question his motives. And clearly for some people, like my friend, this answer is sufficient. Everything is relegated to a super being, a creator. But in truth, our present life experiences of suffering and joy and the differences between people, all these multitudes of situations that we encounter are inexplicable if you omit the importance of past causes. So moreover, if all of these differences are attributed to some creator, then it kind of contradicts the claim that God loves us all. So I'm not here trying to criticize the other religions. What I'm trying to show is that in religions that propose a 2 life theory and everything is attributed to some creator or super being, there are a lot of unknowns. And for the rational thinker, it's actually quite hard to accept. And one can find many problems and contradictions in such teachings and theories. So only the view of life involving 3 life cycles, where we have karma, we have past causes, that produce the present results, this can present a reasonable concept of existence. So the endless cycle of existence from past, present, and future is not merely about birth. It also includes death. After birth, there is death, and after death, there is birth again. So birth and death are continuous, and this is the meaning of endless cycle of existence. So the endless cycle of birth is also the endless cycle of death. And we often view birth as being the beginning of life and death as the end of life. But we should also reflect, death is also the beginning, but it's just the beginning of the next life. Our innate attachment to the self and the I and the craving for life actually leads us to focus on existence as positive and death as being negative. And if we think about it, when a newborn comes into a family, even before it is born, everyone is very excited, very happy. You know, people are buying clothes and toys in preparation for the arrival. But seldom do we think another birth means another death, another funeral that we are likely to attend in the future. A better way to view each existence is like the waves in an ocean. When the wind blows, the waves are stirred up one by one. They rise, they break, and they subside again, and then they rise again. Now, these waves are not merely the rising and falling of the ocean's surface. With careful investigation, one will realize that every drop of water in the ocean is in constant motion. So to explain this constant motion underpinning the endless cycle of existence, we can use the simile of a flowing river or water coming from a spring. So when the water comes up from a spring, it starts to flow. It crosses certain areas, and the amount of water, if in that area is low, the water may flow through cracks in the rocks and boulders and produce some trickling sounds and some splashes. If debris is caught up in the water, then at this point, it can become lodged in the rocks. When the water flows to where there are larger amounts of water, the current can be fast and the rocks form barriers. This will create rapids or eddies among the flowing water. Now, if the water volume is extremely high, you actually can get a vast body of water created, and instead it can look and appear to be very still without waves. There are countless forms of flowing water which arise due to the volume of water and whether or not there are debris mixed in. The flow of life over 3 life cycles is a very similar case. At times, there is great joy, while at others, there is extreme pain. At times, people show great wisdom, while at others, they can show great stupidity. And at times, life can be very short, while at others, it can be longer than an eon. All these differences are a result of the different karmic causes accumulated in past lives. So this continuous cycle spanning 3 lives does not imply a fixed and unchanging being or soul. Rather, there are endless transformations which connect the past to the future. And in this present life, we may be miserable or happy. We could be smart or stupid. We could have a healthy body or tend to be sickly, or we could be human or something else. All these differences are the outcomes from the influence of karmic causes created in past lives. And of course, many results are also due to the karma we create in this present life. So in the past, whether we had held correct and righteous views or deviant views, and whether our actions were lawful and moral or not, or whether we brought benefit or harm to others, all of these countless and complex activities leave behind a karmic force, which exerts an influence on our present and future situations. So this present life is not a brand new existence that just pops up out of nowhere. It's a continuation from the past, and this life we experience the results of past actions. In the same vein, once this life comes to an end, all of our past life activities and the present life activities, the ways of thinking, behavior, the way we have treated others, and so forth, all of these karmic forces will combine, and for those that have not been exhausted, they will bring forth the next life and carry us on into the future. So from one life to the next, though each may appear to be individualistic and unrelated, in truth, they actually form a continual process of flow from past to future. And this process, where past causes give rise to present results and present causes gives rise to future results, also applies to the larger picture of our families, our communities, and even our countries. So remember, we have our own karma, but we also have collective karma. Now, when some people learn about the Buddhist doctrines, they tend to neglect the teaching on the three life cycle. And as a result, they can misunderstand the meaning of liberation. And they think liberation is pessimistic, or that liberation is passive. And some think that liberation is trying to escape. And therefore, they say, what we're teaching is that human life has no meaning at all. Consequently, people who have this type of view, they end up living a life without much will or much energy to change their bad ways or to proactively go and do good. So this is an actual grave mistake because they don't understand the three life cycle and karma. So their actions will carry them into the future, and they will have to experience the unfortunate outcomes of such a decision. So I think this will be a good place to end today's talk. Tomorrow we will then begin the subject of human beings and existence being more than just the combination of a body or a mind. So do we have any questions?
Well, this is Henry from Philadelphia in the US. I really appreciate this
Hello, Henry.
Hello. I really appreciate this idea about this three life cycles. It really kind of brings it all together. Of course, we always have heard of the past, present, and the future, but not in this particular context. And I really think it is very enlightening in that regards. And thank you very much for that. And you tied it in really well.
You're welcome.
Yes, I enjoyed your presentation last year, and I continue to enjoy your benefit from your teaching this year also too. I'm looking forward to the next few days of your discussion and lectures. Is it possible to have some of your view graphs later on, at some point? Would it be possible?
To have some of the what on, sorry?
Some of this view graphs that you have presented. Yes.
Oh, the slide.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
sure. Once Once the whole series is over, I will adjust the slides for a PDF version, and then I will send it to Faye to put it onto the website, so you can download and use it if you find it useful, of course.
Of course, yeah. Thank you very much again. Yes, yeah. Okay.
No, you're welcome. You're welcome. Thanks for the encouragement.
Oh, yes, yeah. Thank you.
So have I lost anyone? Everyone's still muted.
Very nice, Sifu. It was very nice talking about
thank you.
2 lives and 3 lives. A lot of people have this wonder what they do after they die, where they go. So this is always a good explanation for some people have this kind of doubt. They don't want to be hang around somewhere or go to the hell or something, you know. So this is very good.
Yeah.
Very good. So
yes, it is a very common interest for everybody. But I do put out the I wouldn't call it warning, but just a heads up. Most people still think about life and death, and this is even for Buddhists. When they talk about life and death, they somehow still think about it with the notion of some sort of a soul. And so it gets them really stuck when they start to see the Buddhist teachings about there's no soul, there's no I. They really start to think, then how can we be moving from one life to the next? So this is something you all need to really bear in mind when you're listening to these teachings, is to try and, I guess, throw off the burden of having that attachment to an I. And that's not easy. So with these teachings, my suggestion is, after listening to them, just constantly reflect on them in terms of how you see and observe things in your own life and in the things that are happening around you. And then slowly start to appreciate the deeper meaning of what the Buddha is trying to say. So, and sometimes see if you can even catch yourself attaching to the I while applying it to the Buddha's teachings of selflessness and emptiness. And sometimes it can help you to unlock certain areas that you constantly get stuck on. And the reason why we get stuck is because we always fall back to what we feel is safe, and that is holding on to this notion that there must be something permanent. Yeah. Sorry, it's not a COVID cough. It's. Did someone have a question?
I do. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, good.
Yes,
okay.
I can. Hello, Anne-Marie.
Right. Hello. So good to see you. This is my question.
Great to see you too.
Yeah. You were talking about no soul, but that the karma goes from, like, the birth is actually a death and the death is actually a birth, sort of like one, it goes like the seesaw up and down. So what is it that the karma attaches to when it goes, like what you do comes back to you? What is it attaching to if there's no self or soul? That it goes from life to life. What is it going with? What's carrying?
So that's exactly that's a clear example of where we get stuck, because you're still looking for that thing.
Yeah.
for karma, which you have now ascribed as a fixed thing to attach to. So all I can say is, when we have this ignorance in terms of this concept of an I, and it's deeply ingrained in us that we attach to this notion because it gives us our identity. If we completely let go of it, we kind of feel we've lost our safety in a sense. So it'll be hard for you to understand, but what we really need to know here is that the Buddha teaches us things come about with causes and conditions, and that's why there is no permanent, fixed and unchanging thing or soul or the I. But because we have this attachment, we actually create this notion of a being, and with that, our defilements then fuel karma. Remember the importance of defilements in last year's teachings with karma is that not only does defilement allow past karmas to come to fruition, it also causes the present karma, our present actions, to leave behind a latent karmic force, which when the causes and conditions come together in future, it will give rise to the corresponding results. And that's why earlier on I mentioned in life, with each existence for us ordinary beings that are still stuck here, what we're experiencing is we're experiencing the results of our past karma. And so that's pretty much what I can tell you, because the focus is still how can we make sure our life is actually better going forward. And that is, if we know cause and effect and we trust the teachings of cause and effect, then we know what type of a future we want. So we therefore should make, with the right view, the correct decisions of what we do now. And then with our practice, we can actually slowly develop our wisdom to really penetrate the truth of emptiness. And once we gain awakening to that, we cut off defilements. And when you cut off defilements, there is no more, the karma can no longer be created or can no longer ripen. So we can't destroy karma, but we can stop it from arising. So I'll give you that much food for thought. I can see the Buddha picture, so I think it's time to end this class.